So we're here, and this is a pretty momentous occasion because I've been doing all kinds of mindset work, and now I get to do mindset work with one of the most important people in my life, my son, Solomon. So why don't you tell everyone how this kind of came about?
I really can't give an answer because it kind of just came out of nowhere, you know?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Things come out of nowhere, but sometimes that's where things that are meant to be come from out of nowhere. We
Definitely.
were we were just having a conversation and you had mentioned something about potentially being on the podcast. And then I had a thought that popped in my mind, which said, why don't we just do our own podcast? Because there's probably a lot of people that could benefit from hearing your perspective, because your perspective is definitely different than mine, right?
Yeah, definitely different than yours
Right.
in
And
some aspects.
in some aspects, yeah, it's different. But listen, you're around a different generation of people. I'm around the people that I'm around. And so you're bringing that perspective to people, which is a really good thing. And especially to younger adults and even parents, getting to hear your point of view is a really good thing too.
Absolutely. I think hearing stuff from a 19-year-old kid, you look at things a little bit differently when a 19-year-old kid's talking. Like it's different than when a 54-year-old man is talking.
An old man at 54. Yeah, imagine when I'm 74.
Oh,
How did you start how did you start learning about mindset?
from you, your office is right next to my room at home. So you'd wake me up early in the morning by talking without an indoor voice and just hear everything. I'd be half asleep and I'd hear what you were saying and it would stick. The stuff would stick.
It would
So,
stick because I would notice a lot of times that you would say certain things to me, and I was like, well, how is he saying that? But I guess it's because you were hearing it over and over, and the repetition actually works.
yeah, it was definitely repetition because there was a point where every single day I was hearing you and you didn't even know. Every single day I was listening to what you were saying by choice or not by choice. I was always taking something in.
That's interesting. What are some of the things that you took in as you were listening?
Well, I would always hear you question the people that you would work with. You would ask them to really explain why things are happening and how they're happening, or what could be the reason for something happening or the reason for something not happening. And you would really make them articulate what is going on. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. So someone would say something to me, maybe a limiting belief or a negative thought that they were having. And then I would ask them a question to have actually question that thing that they just said. And I start asking them questions all around it so that they can see it from a different perspective and also question whether or not it's really true. And what were some of the things that you heard? Did you notice that when people actually came in with some kind of limiting belief after questioning it for a certain period of time, what ended up happening?
Their belief completely changed
Their
for the
belief
better.
completely changed.
And I would hear people on your computer go, wow, wow, this helps. Wow, I never would have thought of that. They would really be shocked. They heard something that they've never heard before, that they unlocked this new level of thought. And it's just because you were questioning them and you were making them think just a little bit harder.
This is a great point that you're making. I want you to think about either when you were younger or even now and the guys that you hang out with. What are some of the limiting things that you hear them say at times?
I can't, I can't, I can't. I suck, I suck, I suck. I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail.
And they say that. And what do you say anything to them when they say that to you?
I try to. Definitely I definitely do when I can. Sometimes I'll just let them talk cuz they don't want to hear it from me. I can read when someone wants to hear it and when someone doesn't, when the time is right. But yeah, I definitely do. Definitely do try and help. Try my best.
Why do you think a younger adult has this negative perspective on themselves? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, with social media, I think it's very easy to take a negative perspective on things, especially when it comes to your mindset or your self-esteem or anything in that realm. With other than social media, I think it starts when you're really young. And I've heard this from you when you're on the playground and someone says, "Oh, You suck at soccer, you suck at this, and it sticks with you for a long time. But when someone says you're good at something, it kind of just leaves your mind right away. You're happy about that for a day and then it goes away. But when someone says something negative, it kind of sticks with you for a longer period of time. And I think that's definitely a reason why younger people struggle sometimes.
Yeah, and when you're younger, what do you hear more of, positive or negative?
Fortunately, it's negative
Right.
from
So
parents.
that's why that's one of the reasons why someone will believe that negative thing over something that's positive. Because if you hear something enough, like we were saying earlier in the podcast, you would overhear things that I was saying. You would start to understand them. They would start to go into your subconscious mind, and you would actually believe these things to be true. That's the same thing that happens to everyone else. They hear something spoken to them, and that and a lot of times, like you're saying, it's negative, and then they believe it to be true, and they don't question it, like we were talking about just a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And when you don't question something, what happens?
It stays with you. It
Yeah,
stays with you, and it could stay with you forever until you learn to question it.
until you learn to question it. And when you learn to question it, that's when you actually start planting seeds of doubt onto that belief. And when you plant seeds of doubt, what happens to the belief?
It's not a belief anymore.
That's
It
right. It
starts
starts,
to go down and down and down,
yeah, it starts to go down and down and down. It starts to weaken and lose its power.
and eventually it holds no power.
And eventually it holds no power. And if we know that if we hear something over and over and over again, and if we know that when we hear something negative over and over and over again, and it creates a program, and we know that that works, how could we use that to our advantage?
Well, when you think positive, you can surround yourself with positivity. Because if you hear that over and over and over again, it will do the same thing as the negativity, but obviously in a good way.
In a good way. And so the people that you were talking about that saying, I can't, what could they say to themselves instead? If they say it enough, they'll actually believe it.
I can, I can, I can.
I can.
It's very simple. I had someone talking to me and they're like, I have this test and I'm really like I think I'm screwed. I said, why? Why would you be screwed? And they couldn't give me a reason. It's just because it's in your mind. It's so in your mind because you associate a test with negative. No kid looks forward to a test. So it's automatically associated with something negative. But you have to try and flip that. And if you flip that, then you're going to see better results.
It's such a good point. What would you think is the reason that kids have a negative association to tests?
Well, my first memory of taking a test is in first grade, first or second grade. And the teachers would make it out to be this whole thing where you have to study, you have to practice, you have to do this and that. And that goes on and on and on when you're a 7-year-old kid. And it stays with you until you're 19. I am now. And it's all from that. If I guarantee you, if we were in first grade and they said, you have a test, you guys are going to do great on it. You have to practice like this, and this, and it's a recipe for success. We would look forward to tests. We would have a different perspective.
You would
We
have a
would
different
test
perspective
differently.
because
Correct.
there wasn't so much negative association around it. And
Yeah.
also, I'm sure, just like myself, I had many failures in school where my grade was a failure. It didn't mean I was a failure, although many times I associated that if I failed that test, that means I'm stupid, so I must be a failure.
Yeah.
Ever have that feeling?
Yeah, a lot, and like I think it was middle school. I really wasn't good. I wasn't a good student at all. I had a tutor. I was this. I was that. I was not a good student, and it really made me feel like the other kids are getting it. Why can't I? The other kids are doing well. Why am I not doing well? And it hits you even outside of school. You're hit with real world problems, and you say to yourself, "Well, I'm not doing well in school. How would I do well at this?" And it really, really takes a toll mentally. I was an 11, 12-year-old kid, and I was thinking I'm not going to go anywhere in life because I wasn't good at math.
That's right. Because we associate, and I did the exact same thing as you're talking about. We associate that if I do bad on a test, that must mean I'm a failure. But
Right.
what does it actually mean when you don't do well on a test?
It means you had a little bit of a struggle with one particular thing. Everyone has struggled before with one aspect of, like, no one's perfect, and if there's a perfect person out there, they should come see me because I've never seen one before. So it's one thing. You have to look at it as it's just a little bump in the road. It's not like the road ends. That's how I always look at it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Actually, all that it says is that for that test that you took, for whatever reason, you either didn't study enough or you didn't spend enough time, but it doesn't mean that you're smart or
Or dumb.
stupid. It just means that you, in that, maybe for that test, something came up and you just didn't study enough. You weren't feeling well. It just means that during that period of time, you didn't do what you needed to do to get that result, but it certainly doesn't mean that you're not smart. And how can we
100%.
prove that to be the case?
Well, you look at your results in other things. You can look at your results in other fields. Say, oh, I didn't do well in math, but I did well here. I did well there. So am I really dumb? And then if you're not doing well in anything, it's still going to hit you. But you have to realize that it's just in school, you're taking 3, 4, 5, 6 subjects. You're learning about different subjects. None of those might be for you. And then there's a one that you're something that you're not learning in school, and that might be for you. Everyone has a niche, but sometimes school doesn't reflect that.
You're making an amazing point, which is if I'm not interested in history, the chances that I'm going to do well on the tests are probably not that high because I'm not interested. But what was something that you did really like in school? What was something that you, or something in life that you're very interested in?
It's funny because if you talk about school, I was interested in history. You picked a interesting one there, but I was always interested in history. I always did fairly well in it. It was simple to me. You look back on a time period, you studied that time period, and then you spit it out on the test. I mean, that's pretty much all school. But it was interesting to me because you were learning about real people who did real things, and that's why I always liked it
And that's why you liked it. You found it interesting. And because you found it interesting, you paid more attention.
and
And then
applied
when it came to
myself.
tests, you did well.
Yeah,
So maybe what it means when we do well on a test or don't do well on a test is I have an interest in this subject and I don't have an interest in this subject. And that's all that it is. Because if you went to school and every single subject that you studied was something that you really loved, what do you think your grades would be in school?
I think I would be valedictorian.
You'd be the
I think
valedictorian.
everyone would. I think everyone would.
And I think that's a really important point. And this is a great lesson about mindset. Just because we're not doing good in a specific area doesn't mean anything about us. It can mean many things. One of which is what we just discussed is maybe I just don't have an interest in that topic.
Absolutely.
If you're not good in baseball and you're good in soccer, what could be the reason why you're good at one and not the other?
Maybe you're just a little bit more interested in one.
Right. I enjoy playing that sport more, and therefore I give more effort and I put more energy in and I get better results.
Absolutely.
This is a really solid point to be making. Well, let me ask you this from your friends, from other people, from you, from your life. If you were giving advice to parents on what they could do to support their kids when they're going through struggles in their life, what's the best thing that a parent could do for their kid?
Yeah, I think one word is just positivity. You have to be positive toward your kid. You can't be negative. There's something called tough love, and I completely agree that tough love works, but you always have to start with positivity. Be positive. Tell them they're great, even if they're not. Tell them they are because they will believe that they are, and then they'll become great. Always be positive and reflect, and they'll reflect that. They'll reflect the positivity if you put it into the air.
Right. There's a way of saying something to a child or to a friend or to a family member so that they'll hear it. Like you were saying, tough love. I got to get a point across to them. And then at the end, you finish it with something really positive about the person. Because
Absolutely.
why do you think that leaving them with something positive versus doing the positive first and then the negative, why do you think that's important?
Because normally the last thing you hear is kind of what sticks with you. I'm counting to 10. the 10 is going to stick with you more than the one because you heard it more recently. I think it's as simple as that.
It's so true. It's 100% true. The last thing you hear is going to have the most impact. So if you're going to leave something with whoever you're talking to, you might as well finish it off with something positive about them. I remember going into work and you would go in and you'd meet with your manager, and the manager would always have, they would start off with some nice things like, you're doing well here, you're doing well here, and then you knew what was coming. There was going to be followed up with a bunch of negative things. So the positive things that they were saying, I couldn't even hear what they were saying because I was so prepping in my mind to hear what negative was coming. I didn't hear the positive. That's one of the reasons also why leave positive to the end, because again, if it's the last thing you hear and you've already heard some of the not negative, but just things that can help you be better in life, that would be a reason to hear it last rather than first. And how many times do you think parents actually do that?
Rarely. One out of every 30 times.
1 out of 30 times.
It's a rare thing, and it shouldn't be, because that little switch could make all the difference.
Yeah, because if someone is saying these negative things over and over, what is the child or what is the person or what is, it doesn't even have to be a child. It could be anyone that's talking. What are they going to start to believe about themselves?
Negative things. They're going to take it in like a sponge almost,
And they'll believe this to be true,
because that's
even though what you mentioned earlier again, if we question whether something is true or not, most of the time, what are we going to realize?
that most things we hear aren't.
And most of the negative thing, like what's one negative thing that you used to say to yourself and maybe you still say to yourself?
Well, one thing was I would always overthink in high school about college, getting into college, succeeding in college. And because I heard that if you had these certain grades, you probably weren't going to succeed in college. Well, here I am as a sophomore in college, and I'm doing pretty damn good. So it didn't even take questioning there. I proved it. But I could have said during that time, I could have questioned, is that really true? Is there proof of that? Or are they just saying it to scare me? Are they saying it to try and make me work harder, even though I think I was working pretty hard? There's always a second thought to something that you hear.
Yeah. And that second thought could be the question,
That
could be
is
come from the question. And when we ask the question of, is that really true? Even if you just use that statement on anything, well, I'm really not that smart because I didn't get such good grades. So probably I'm not going to get into, the best college. And then you ask the question, is that really
is that
true?
really true?
Because then if you ask that question, what answers are you going to look for? If you ask, is that really true?
You're going to look for conflicting answers that conflict your original belief.
Right, you're going to prove to yourself that it's false. And that's what most people don't do. Most people accept that whatever it is that they said to me, whatever it is that I heard, whatever it is that I kept repeating to myself must be true.
Must be true. Right.
And the truth is,
It's not.
it's not. It's not true. So this is again a really important piece of information for both a parent and their child and anyone to be able to know. It doesn't matter where you're at in life. If you know that you have a limiting belief and you know that based on what I've just heard Solomon and Michael say, that probably may not be true if I just question it. How many things that you've questioned were you not able to prove as being false?
Was I not able to prove? Not many. Pretty
Not
much
many.
everything was proven to be false. And you can see that with time. Now, looking back 4 or 5 years, almost every negative thought that I had wasn't true. It wasn't true.
But no one really taught you at the time to question it that way.
No one did. No one did. And I wasn't doing it. I was a 13, 14-year-old kid. I didn't know what that meant, what questioning anything meant. Everything that was said to me, I believed. Never once did I question anything.
You bring up a really good topic. I want to ask you about this. Sometimes people will offer us advice. They'll say, Solomon, you should really do this in your life. Who should we be listening to when taking advice? Who are the best people to listen to?
Well, I've said it to you a few times. I said I wouldn't take advice from anyone who I wouldn't take criticism from.
It's a great point.
If
Yeah.
someone I wouldn't, there's not many people I would take advice from. There's people who are high up in their fields who obviously if they're giving me advice, sure. But if it's just an average a kid who's just saying something to say it because they might disagree, that's not advice. That's really not. That's just
What
them trying to make a point. There's a big difference between someone making a point and someone giving you genuine advice. And I think that's something that people really need to focus on.
I couldn't agree more with what you just said. There's a difference between an opinion and a fact.
Opinion
And
and
what you're hearing from friends and other people who aren't specialists in that area is an opinion. For example, imagine that I had a heart problem. Why would I talk to my cousin who is an accountant? Why would I ask him about my heart problem? Who would I go and speak to?
what is it, a cardiologist?
A
A
cardiologist or a
chart?
heart surgeon,
Okay,
right?
there
I
we
would
go.
like first start with a cardiologist. Why
Yeah,
would I start with the cardiologist?
because they know a thing or two about the heart.
It's their specialty.
Exactly.
So we should only be taking advice from people that are specialists in that area. If I have a problem with money, should I be asking someone that has no money in their bank account and struggles all the time with money their opinion?
That would not be good.
How about if I'm in a relationship and I'm having problems in my relationship? Should I be asking people that are struggling in their relationships for advice?
Absolutely not. Unless you want some advice that's not going to get you very far.
How many people that are getting advice on a specific topic in a specific area do you think are actually talking to a specialist?
Not many at all.
Yeah, out of 10 people that actually get advice, how many of you think are actually getting it from a specialist?
Half of one person, not even one. Not
Yeah,
even one.
right, not
I'd say
even
it's
one.
something lower than one.
So not even 1% of people are getting, and yet this is where a lot of people make their decisions on what they're going to do in their relationship and life is based on a friend or a family member that gave them an opinion, not a
Mhm.
fact. And therefore, who should they be talking to instead?
Someone who
Special.
knows what they're talking about. It makes all the difference. When you're a kid, you're playing soccer, you're playing baseball, basketball, you're going to go to your coach, but is your coach a specialist? No, your coach is a dad who's volunteering his time. Like you coach soccer. Would you be comfortable giving advice to someone about soccer? I don't think you would. I don't think you
No,
would.
no, I may be about dribbling the ball, but very basic soccer advice
Right.
because I'm certainly not a specialist, and I certainly wouldn't tell someone how they are at playing soccer.
Yeah, if I was going to ask you about a certain formation, that's not one of three formations that you would think I'm speaking a different language. But kids will ask their coach that, and their coaches will try and give them an answer and try and seem smart, but in reality, they don't know. They really don't know. And they're going to tell the kid something that's not true, and then the kid's going to believe it.
I love what you just said there, which is if you don't know the answer, what should you do and what should you say?
You shouldn't say anything. If you don't know an answer to something, you say, I don't know. Try this, try that, try Googling it even. That's just a little bit better than you have to leave someone on the right foot.
Exactly. Because if you come to me as a kid and you ask me soccer advice and I make up something, what's going to happen to you and your belief around that?
I'm going to believe something that's made up, and that's not going to help me at all.
And this is what happens most of the time when anyone goes to get advice. They're getting advice from people that they shouldn't be getting advice from. It's fine if you want someone's opinion, but even an opinion, why would you want to get an opinion from someone that is not an expert or a specialist in that area? What do you think?
Some people just want to hear something. They want to hear something from someone, whether it's good or bad. They just want to hear something.
That's a great point. But if we made a rule and we said to ourselves, here's the rule moving forward. From now on, if I want to get an opinion or if I want to ask a question, the only person I'm going to ask that question to is someone that's a specialist in that area. What do you think starts to happen as you move forward?
You're going to see your results skyrocket. You're going to see in whatever field you're in and whatever questions you have, and you're going to start getting those answers from people who know what they're talking about. Your results are going to go through the roof. I've done it before. I've read, I'm in psychology, and that's what I'm studying. And I've read, pieces from psychologists and neuroscientists is the other one. And that's helped me so much. But then there's other kids who are psychology majors who are on the same foot as me trying to tell me things. And I think to myself, like, I appreciate you trying, but is that really who I want to listen to at this time?
Great point. And I'm telling you, again, if you take that on as your new kind of, hey, how do I play the game of life? And here's one rule that you can apply to your life, which is from now on, from this point forward, I'm only going to ask advice from someone that's a specialist in that area. So let's talk about what we talked about today, because reviewing what we've spoken about is an important thing. So what are some of the things that we spoke about that you think would be important for people to kind of take away and walk away from this?
The thing at the beginning, we have to leave them, like, right, what we said, we have to always leave something with the most positive thing. I think the first thing we talked about was always question. Always question. And it
Always.
doesn't have to be a bad thing to question. You always just have to question what you're thinking, what's in your head. Is this really true? That's the best thing I think we said today. Is this really true?
Is this really true?
Negative true.
Great point. For the longest time, they thought that the world was flat.
Is this really true?
Is this really true? Right. But someone questioned it. And then eventually they realized, no, it's not true.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, people walked around being positive that that was a fact, but it wasn't. If that can be proven wrong, so can almost anything.
Anything.
And I think, again, that's the power. Whether you're an adult, a kid is realizing that, hey, I've been telling myself these things for the longest time. And most of the time, these things that I've been telling myself are not true.
True.
Wouldn't that be a powerful thing to walk away with?
Very.
So we talked about that, always questioning. And then number two, and a really good point that I think to walk away with is from now on, I only am going to ask for advice from someone who is a specialist.
100%. 100%.
Because in your day to day, when you're around a group of kids and they're talking, how much of that is factual versus just opinions that are made up of?
Oh, I think college is a place where it's all opinion. Unless you're talking to your professor who's a master at what they're doing, everything else is opinion. Whether it's an opinion you hear on the street about sports, whether it's something about a class you're in, it's all opinion. It really is. It's just kids who want to get stuff off their chest and tell somebody about it because they think they're right when they aren't necessarily right.
It's a great point. And I want to hit what you just said, because let's say you're in business and you go to a business professor and he gives you advice. He's like, yeah, I don't think that's a really good idea for your business.
Is this really true?
Is this really true? And is he a specialist or she?
Yeah.
How many times could a business professor maybe not be a specialist?
Yeah, there's plenty of times. If that professor has ran 5 businesses and they're telling you this might not work for you, then you say, oh, hi, of course. Yeah, I'd take your word for it. But if it's just a professor who's read the book, then what do they know, about you? They might know a lot about business, but what do they know about what's going to work for you as a person?
Yeah. And so therefore it becomes more of an opinion based on
Exactly.
rather than a fact. So even when we go to who can be perceived as a specialist, they still might not have the right answer. We really have to make sure that they're truly a specialist. You would think a business professor would be a specialist, but if you're, like you said, if they're not running businesses, then they're not really a specialist because they haven't had their skin in the game. Like they haven't actually had the experience of running that business. They have the book understanding of a business, but that's very different than running a business.
Yeah, and business is one of the things that changes on the fly. That stuff changes not even every day. There's different things that go on in business, and the book can't possibly cover all that.
It can't. And I want to ask one last question before we kind of come to a close. What if you go to a specialist and you're thinking about this idea to run a business, and that specialist has run a bunch of businesses, but inside of you, you really have this gut feeling, like just really have this gut feeling that this will work. What would you do in that scenario?
You always have to follow it. You have to follow that feeling, because that feeling, if you don't follow it, it will stick with you for so long. And then it's going to impact other things negatively. So you always have to follow that. My opinion, I know we're talking about opinion versus fact, but in my opinion, as someone who's not a specialist, I would always follow that feeling inside. Because when your gut tells you something, you know that you should go for it. You get that feeling inside.
Yeah, and that's a question I've asked a lot of clients is, can you tell me a time where you truly trusted your gut? Like it was a gut feeling, not a discussion, a feeling like, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do. And it's been wrong. And every single one of them has said the same thing. They can't think of a time where they really truly trusted their gut feeling, went with it, and it didn't work out for them. So I think that's the one thing that could potentially override a specialist.
Definitely.
I remember, when mom, she was having an eye issue. This was years ago, and we went to see a specialist, and he thought it was one thing, and he was sure that's what it was, but we questioned it. He
Hmm.
didn't like that we questioned it, but we questioned it.
Yeah.
It was mom and I had a gut feeling that was just not the case what he was saying, and guess what? It turned out. Guess what turned out to be right.
You guys were right because I remember that.
The gut feeling? Yeah, I know you were there. I remember. It's a long time ago.
Right.
Okay, so let's pull this to a close. And what's a message that you want to get out to the people that are listening today, so that they continue to tune in and listen to this?
Well, first of all, if they made it all the way here, thank you. Thank you for listening. It does mean a lot. But I think the message is always think a little bit harder. Take the extra step when it comes to your thinking, whether it's something positive or something negative going on in your life. Always think and really wrap your head around what's going on before you make a decision.
I love that. That's a great advice. And for me, I want to just share this message that Solomon and I are far from perfect. We're striving to get better every day. And if you just take one piece of what you got today and you just learn 1%, right? And you get 1% better each day, in a couple of years from now, you're going to be in a far greater place than you are now. So a lot of times we have this thought, hey, I want to go to the gym and I want to get in shape. And the thought is, I'm going to start eating differently. I'm going to go exercise 5 times a week. And then we end up doing that for a couple of days and we quit. Because why do we quit, Solomon?
Because you're starting with something that's instead of getting 1% better every day, you're going for 100% in one day. And that's not going to work. That's
It
never
never
going to work.
it never works. What would be the best thing if someone wanted to get in shape? What would be the best way to start?
Start maybe by going on a few walks a week. Then you start going to the gym 3 times a week. Again, I'm no expert in any of this, but you have to just think. You have to think what's going to make sense for me. And for someone trying to get in shape, you have to take it slow. You can't jump right in and compete with the bodybuilders because that's not going to work.
That's exactly right. Habits are formed one small step at a time. If I want to eat differently, I'm not going to change my whole diet. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? For the next week, I'm just going to work on eating one healthy snack. Instead of that bag of Doritos, I'm going to have a healthy snack instead, just one time a day, and do that for a couple weeks. And then you say, okay, you know what? Instead of drinking a soda, I'm going to have water instead. And you do that for 2 weeks. If someone does that, what are they creating by doing that?
They're creating habits slowly but surely.
And when you
It's not supposed to be rushed. You have to do it slowly but surely, or else it's not going to work.
Those are the things that stick when you do it. So my thought process for everyone that's listening is, take one little thing that you heard today and apply it, but just small. Just do a little small step. And then next week you come back and you listen to another thing and you'll take another small step. And before you know it, you'll have gotten much further than when you first started. And that's the goal and that's the key. So
I completely agree with that.
yeah, I'm great. I'm grateful for the audience for listening. I'm grateful for you, Solomon. I mean, one of the best days of my entire life, and this is 100% true, was the day that you were born. I always wanted to have a boy, and I remember mom showing me on the, what do you call it?
Screen?
Yeah, no, I remember when we were going to see the sonogram at the woman stops and she says, "Do you want to know what it is?" And when they asked that, I kind of already figured it was a boy because she saw something there. And
Yeah,
then she said it was a boy, and I literally celebrated. And it's, has it been a perfect ride for us? No, but it's never a perfect ride. But the truth is I wouldn't choose to do it with anyone else other than you. So I'm grateful that you're here, and I'm looking forward to having more discussions like this with you.
absolutely. Absolutely.